Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about science and history. In this video, I'm going to discuss the very important topic of viral load. But first, we're going to take a little tour of southwest England. About 20 years ago, I was working in Bristol, England. It was midsummer, the nights were very short, and I was waking up pretty early. I had a few hours to kill before my meeting, so I went out for a drive, and I stumbled upon the town of Berkeley. This is the Berkeley Castle, which is 900 years old. The Berkeley family have occupied this house for that entire time, making them the longest residents of the same home in England. The Berkeley family famously murdered King Edward II in their dungeon. They dropped him down a 30-foot hole into the dungeon and left him to rot, but it actually took about a month for him to finally die. The Berkeley family is also famous because they started a college in California known as Berkeley. The Berkeley family weren't the only famous residents of that tiny little town. This guy, Edward Jenner, also became extremely famous. He invented the smallpox vaccine. He noticed that milkmaids who handled cows seemed to be immune to smallpox. The milkmaids commonly developed a rash on their hands known as cowpox, and this rash seemed to keep them immune from smallpox. So Jenner came up with the idea of intentionally infecting people with cowpox in order to make them immune to smallpox, and his idea worked. He became the inventor of the vaccine and saved countless lives. But his work came too late for George Washington, who nearly died from smallpox when he was 19 years old. He was extremely sick for 26 days. The smallpox left his face severely scarred, which is why he's wearing makeup in this portrait. One of the little-known facts about the Revolutionary War is that there was a terrible smallpox epidemic raging at the same time. But they did not lock down, and in 1775 the Americans invaded Quebec in order to drive the British troops out. The invasion turned out to be a disaster because half of the American troops got sick with smallpox. So General Washington decided to do something illegal in order to protect his troops. What General Washington did was known as variolation. He intentionally infected his troops with small amounts of pus from a person sick with smallpox. Infecting the troops with a small amount of the virus made them sick, but it didn't kill them, and it gave them immunity to the virus. His efforts were extremely successful, and the infection rate for the troops dropped down to about 1%. On the other side of the pond, King George III tried the same technique on his son Octavius. Unfortunately, the boy got too much of the virus and died a horrible death. The loss of his son devastated the king. So now is where I introduce the idea of viral load. People have a finite number of immune cells in their system. If they get exposed to too much of a virus, they're going to get sick, no matter how healthy their immune system is. That was why the key to a successful variolation was making sure that the patient only got exposed to a very small amount of the virus. Now let's fast forward to Houston, Texas on June 2nd, 2020. Tens of thousands march on downtown Houston to memorialize George Floyd. COVID droplets can stay in the air for 20 minutes. Now imagine you're at the back of the march walking forwards. You're breathing in air which was expelled by thousands and thousands of people in front of you. So these marchers got exposed to a huge viral load, but they believed they were safe because they were wearing masks. Public health authorities encouraged them to go on these marches, and Dr. Fauci said nothing to discourage them. And not surprisingly, after the protest, there was a huge increase in cases in Houston. The viral load was too great and many people became sick. And in order to cover their malfeasance, the health authorities told doctors not to ask people if they were at the protests. Now let's compare that to what Sweden did. Sweden obtained herd immunity through a controlled transmission of the virus. They left under 16 kids in school because they're not very vulnerable to the virus and they don't often transmit it to others. Sweden kept their restaurants and bars open while encouraging people to social distance. This allowed for a controlled transmission of the virus under a low viral load. What Sweden did was actual science, as opposed to the mindless chaos unleashed by U.S. health authorities. Everything about the U.S. COVID story reeks of politics. And we have the press and politicians, including my own Congressperson Liz Cheney, heaping praise on Dr. Fauci for his incredible incompetence. Toto hopes that President Trump fires Dr. Fauci and replaces him with someone competent. Dr. Fauci allowing those protests to proceed was completely unconscionable. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.